I am very honored to be here with you today. I've had a few days to get acquainted with the great people of New Zealand, and this has been a real pleasure. So part of what I'll talk about here is I use different processes to help stretch people's imaginations. And we use them in our consulting arm called the Visionarium. And so I'll use some of those techniques here today. But I first have to tell you about my crystal ball, because as a futurist, I get asked if I have a crystal ball a lot. And yes, I do have a crystal ball. And it was sitting around at home, and my wife says, "Why don't you just take this to the office? It's just collecting dust." And so I put it in the car. I was driving down the road. I was no more than about 4 or 5 minutes down the road, and I looked over and I saw that my crystal ball had started a fire on the seat next to me. This is the sun shining in. This is a giant lens. And luckily, I was able to put out the fire and it didn't cause any serious damage. But then I had this premonition. Obviously, it came from my crystal ball. And the premonition was that the next day, the newspaper headlines were going to say, "Futurist killed by his own crystal ball." And he didn't see it coming. So that's like the ultimate insult for a futurist. So how do we know about the future? You know, we all participate in creating the future. Everybody here plays a role in creating the future. Some people have a little more influence than others so. But people make decisions today based on their understanding of what the future holds. So I use this phrase, "the future creates the present." Now this is just the opposite of what most people think. Most people think that what we're doing today is going to create the future, but from a little different perspective, it's those images of the future that we hold in our head determine our actions today. So we make decisions based on these images that we have of the future. So if we change people's visions of the future, we change the way they make decisions today. So I'm going to change your vision of the future here today. That's my bold claim. Once you leave here, you'll have a different vision of the future, and as a result of that, you will make different decisions. If I don't do that, please hold my feet to the fire. I'm also going to be making a big announcement here today. I've been hyping that up in the hallways and everything, so towards the end here, it'll be the big announcement. I'll let you know when it's coming, though. As my favorite physicist, Max Planck, likes to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. In 2013, last year, a little less than a year ago, I was invited to South Korea to speak at this global sports marketing forum. They asked me to come and talk on the future of sports. This is an odd topic. I've never talked on that one before. I'm not actually that big a sports fan, so I'm not sure why they picked me. But I went there. They're doing this series of events leading up to the next Winter Olympics that's going to be in South Korea. And so this was one of those. So they asked me to talk about the future of sports. And so I started off talking about, in 1997, there was this competition between Deep Blue and Garry Kasparov, the world reigning chess champion. Edward Friedkin was a computer scientist at Carnegie Mellon University. He'd put up $100,000 for this prize back in 1980. IBM decided to add a little bit of money to it, so they put in another $1 million. And they ran this competition, and Garry Kasparov ended up losing to Deep Blue. He got $400,000. The Deep Blue guys got $700,000 out of that. And then along came 2011, and IBM did a similar publicity stunt, if you will, where they pitted their Watson computer against the two reigning champions of Jeopardy in this competition, which is a very, very unusual sentence structures and how they ask these questions. It's very human-like in how they do things. And so everybody was kind of blown away that the computer actually won and beat these two champions quite handily, actually. So when you see this, the machines are 2-to-1 against humans. And so you're thinking, well, does this mean that driverless cars are going to start winning all of the car races? Does this mean that robots are going to start beating humans in boxing or basketball or golf? Or the worst part of all is, will we have robot rugby? That would be bad, wouldn't it? Actually, we're asking the wrong question, because people don't want to see humans compete against robots. It's human-to-human competition that we're interested in. So why is that? Competitive sports are the ultimate form of storytelling. It's human drama that's unfolding before our eyes. It's contests with good guys and bad guys. People are overcoming adversity. You see the triumphs of the human spirit with an unknown outcome, and it's all happening in real time. This is the ultimate form of storytelling. Competitive sports is the ultimate form of fresh content in a world where relevance is gauged by timeliness and hyper-awareness is our competitive edge. At the same time, we're re-engineering athletes. And so this isn't a matter that's been somehow settled by any stretch. We're creating bigger and better athletes than ever before. We're re-engineering the equipment. We're creating superfoods so that they have better diets. We're genetically modifying the athletes. We're even creating super babies. So when you think about creating super babies, these super babies are going to grow up to be adults. So are we going to allow the super babies to compete? Are superhumans actually still human? Will people still pay to see superhumans compete? These are great questions. But again, it's the wrong question. Could there possibly be another use for superhumans besides sports? Really? It's just sports? That's the only thing we can think of? So this technology that's getting created is something I call catalytic innovation. Now, we don't know exactly where it's all going to go just yet. But catalytic innovation is different than disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation disrupts existing industries, forcing companies to do more with less. Catalytic innovation creates entire new industries. Past examples of catalytic innovations were things like electricity, automobiles, airplanes, photographs, telephones. All of these went on to create multi-billion-dollar industries. But here's the thing, all industries are a bell curve. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yes, at some point all industries end and get replaced by another industry. And the key thing here is that most industries today happen to be in the second half of the bell curve. The most profitable ones, the ones that are making the most money, are being forced to do more with less, and they're on the downhill side. So I'll use this example of peak steel. Peak oil, we hear quite a bit about that, but that's a little more controversial. Projections are that we're going to reach the peak demand for steel in the world sometime around 2024. That's when we develop composite materials and the overall demand for steel starts to decline. The peak demand for employment in the steel industry actually happened in the 1980s. That's when we had more people working in that industry than ever before. In the United States, it was over 3 times what we have today, but we're actually creating far more steel today. So the peak employment ends up being a precursor. That becomes a lead indicator as a later decline for that goods or services. So when we talk about libraries, Have we reached peak employment in libraries? And when will we reach peak demand for library services? So I'll come back to this question a little later on in the talk here. This is just to stir your imagination a little bit here. We have several global thought leaders that are inspiring us, that are taking our thinking in different directions. I'll just mention a few of them here. Mark Andreessen, who's the founder of Netscape, he says that software is eating the world. Vinod Khosla, who happens to be the most successful venture capitalist of all time, he says that big data is going to eliminate the need for 80% of all doctors. Christian Hammond, the guy that started this company called Narrative Sciences, he says by 2030, 90% of all the news will be written by computers. Chris Anderson, the former managing editor of Wired magazine, he says that 3D printing is going to be bigger than the internet. And Pete Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize Foundation, he says that we're headed from a world with 2 billion people connected to the internet in 2010 to 7 billion in 2020. And I'll explain how that's going to happen. And because I didn't want to get left out here, I had my own quote added in here. A few months back, I predicted that by 2030, over 2 billion jobs are going to disappear. Now, when I make a statement like this isn't intended to be a doom and gloom statement. It's intended to be a wake-up call. So rather than thinking of this as 2 billion people being unemployed, it means that we need to create systems for re-employing people at a faster rate than ever before. And those systems currently don't exist. This is all part of what I call the level problem. Now, this is a tool that a lot of us have in our garage at home. We use it to get our picture straight on the wall. If we're building some construction project, we make sure that everything's level. But once we are able to download a mobile app that's a level app, then suddenly we don't need to buy that product. That means that we don't have the need for somebody to make that aluminum frame. We don't have the need for somebody to make the glass bulbs on it, to assemble it, the shipping and receiving people, the retail stores that handle it. Every time we download a mobile app, we eliminate a piece of a job. It's a very tiny piece, but when we have literally billions and billions of mobile apps being downloaded, we are eliminating lots of jobs. This is being referred to as technological unemployment, automating jobs out of existence. At the same time that we're eliminating these jobs, the other side of the coin is we're freeing up human capital. We can apply this talent to other problems. Just because there aren't enough jobs doesn't mean that we've somehow run out of work to do in the world. That's kind of preposterous. Think that we've suddenly ran out of work? Not even close. But having jobs lined up with all the work that needs to be done, that's another issue. So what role should libraries play in the creation of new business and industry? I think this becomes a fundamental question because we think about libraries being tied to education, we think about libraries being tied to little kids growing up, we think about libraries in lots of different contexts. We tend not to think about their relationship with business and industry because that's been surviving on its own for a long time. But in the startup world, where people are starting new businesses, that's a much more challenging environment. These are not wealthy people. These are people that are working day and night. They need lots of help. They don't have all the answers. So when Mark Andreessen talks about software eating the world, it's really what's happening. We're actually creating this digital information infrastructure covering everything physical in the world. And a lot of it's happening through this Internet of Things. Now, the Internet of Things is manifesting itself in lots of interesting ways. The origins of it, Cisco says that the Internet of Things started somewhere around between 2008 and 2009. That's when the number of devices connected to the internet started to exceed the number of people on Earth. We had 6.8 billion devices connected to the internet then, and then we had 6.8 billion people on Earth. Projections are now that we're going to reach 50 billion things connected to the internet by 2020. So we're constantly asking, what are all these things going to be? And last year, about this time in San Francisco, they had an event called the Trillion Sensor Summit. And they were mapping out how long it would be before we reach 1 trillion sensors in the world. The roadmap that they put together shows that we will reach that point somewhere around 2024. And by 2036, we'll have 100 trillion sensors in the world. Now, what this means is that these sensors are becoming very simple and easy and cheap to manufacture. And we can have sensors for measuring temperature, moisture content, chemical composition, all kinds of different things. We can measure these, and because these are so tiny and cheap and easy, we will be embedding them into the paints that we paint on the side of our house, on the sides of bridges, on the sides of cars. We will have information coming from virtually every surface once we have this many sensors available to us. As a result of this, innovation is being parsed into far smaller pieces, which means more and more people can participate. It's not just the select few designers that are creating new products, it's everybody's out there creating new stuff. And I'll show you some examples of that. So there's this category of products called enchanted objects. In this whole Internet of Things category, there's these enchanted objects. And I love talking about these because these all have like magical properties, which I find quite fascinating. The first one I'll talk about is the Amazon trash can. The Amazon trash can is one where you finish a product, you throw your can into the trash can, it scans the barcode and it reorders it from Amazon for you. Now, Amazon really likes this product. This is the MemoMe Smart Mirror. What this does is while you're trying on clothes, it records your last images. And you can do side-by-side comparisons. You look better in this dress or that dress. I kind of concluded I don't look good in any dress, but this is the Vitality Glow Cap. A lot of people have to take their medicine at a certain time every day. So what this does is it reminds people. If you forget to take your pill at your certain time, then the light starts flashing at the top. If you still forget to take it after a while, then it starts chirping. And if you still forget to take it, it'll start sending you text messages. This thing will really nag you until you get your pills taken. This is the ambient umbrella. This thing's really smart because it knows what the weather's going to be. And so when you're walking out the door, you'll see your umbrella, and if the handle is glowing on it, then it reminds you that you should take it along with you. Wouldn't it be nice if all of our products were that smart? This is the Mimo baby monitor. The little thing that plugs right into the onesies that babies are wearing. Monitors everything from temperature to heartbeat, breathing, and movements. I love this one here. This is the Flying Nixie camera. It looks like, kind of like a wristwatch. It's a wearable technology. You just unhook it, you take it off, and it turns into this, and then you can throw it like a frisbee, and it turns into a flying drone that you control with your smartphone. It's got cameras on it, so then you can just instantly start spying on people. I mean, who wouldn't want that? This thing here is very smart. This is a biometric coffee maker. Get up in the morning, you put your hand on it, it knows exactly how much caffeine you need. It also knows how much sugar you should be having in your diet, and we don't know if it has a Jack Daniel's switch on it or not, but maybe. These are smart chopsticks. The search engine company Baidu, the big Chinese search engine, they came up with these chopsticks, then they can tell whether or not your food is safe to eat. Now this is very cool, except the bad thing is you have to know how to use chopsticks. So. Since a lot of people are predicting not having enough food for everybody in the future, these people have put together this, this appliance for the kitchen where you can grow your own fly larvae. Nothing sounds more yummy than that, huh? This is the Pinto Feed pet feeder. So if you have pets at home while you're at work, you can dispense food remotely, and then you can FaceTime them. While they're eating, you can talk to them. They don't like to eat by themselves. So if you have pets at home and you're not FaceTiming them now, then shame on you. And this one here, this is a little bit off the deep end, but this is called No More Wolf. And so this is a device where they're trying to get down to reading the mind of the dog and translating it into human words. They have a ways to go on that one yet. It looks pretty appealing though, doesn't it? As we move into an era of intelligent things, what kind of things should a library be lending out? This idea that libraries lend out books, lend out audiobooks, they lend out Kindles, maybe some other devices. I just showed you a whole bunch of devices here. These are intelligent things that maybe it's going to make sense to lend out things like this in the future. But what kind of parameters would you put around it? If somebody makes a drone the size of a huge car, that's probably too big to be lending out that. If there's some other things. I always say the problem with nanotechnology is you can never remember where you put your work. So some things are too small to keep track of. So this raises some real interesting questions because it is entirely possible in the future to have a corporation sponsor your library and give you things to loan out to people as a way of testing things out. Is that a business model that you want to consider? Maybe. Technological unemployment is driving the need for future industries. So these future industries are going to be able to be creating all the jobs of the future. And in lots of ways, traditional education is not able to keep up on this, so people are having to train themselves. This is a picture of Charles Hull. He's the guy that started the whole 3D printer revolution back in the mid-1980s. Now, originally, they were just printing in plastics and resins. Now there's over 300 printable materials, and in just a few years, that number will probably go up to 3,000. They're uncovering all kinds of interesting ways of using this technology. This is a very cool device here. This is a combination 3D printer, scanner, and fax machine. So you can put an object in there, you can scan it, then you can fax it to somebody else who has one of these machines and print it out there. Now, we've never had that option in the past of sending an object to somebody. I want to send you something for your birthday. What would it be? I don't know. I haven't thought about that. 3D printers are going to scale up in lots of different ways and get much bigger. This is actually a 3D printed car that was printed by Local Motors. It took them 44 hours to print the whole thing, including the tires, including the whole outside and everything. In the not too distant future, you walk into a clothing store, the first thing you'll do is you'll step into a body scanner. The body scanner will scan your entire body and give you a set of measurements, and all you have to do then is go around and pick out whatever styles, fashions, colors you're interested in, and you can print out your clothing right then and there. And it'll fit perfect every time. How cool is that? This is a picture of my wife. We were at the Consumer Electronics Show in January down in Las Vegas. She was trying on clothes and virtual clothes in front of a smart mirror, and she could swipe one dress over to the next dress, to the next dress. You can try on a lot of clothes really fast with these things. This is actual 3D printed clothing. We can print unusual styles. We can print things that we can't make in any other way. Very complicated fashions as a result of this. This is a whole new line of clothing that's 3D printed. I refer to this lady as Porcupine Woman. She has problems getting close to people. In Russia, they had a ban on lingerie, so they started printing their own lingerie in Russia. So these are some examples of 3D printed dresses. And it's not just clothing, it's also shoes. We can print our shoes as well. We scan our feet and they fit perfect every time. So I'm not sure what these shoes actually say about the person wearing them. Maybe that they're available. But if that person gets into trouble, then they can use these shoes here. These are, and if they're still in trouble, then they use these shoes here. I gotta think these would be really hard walking across the lawn with those. But the thing is that we can design products and create new products in ways that we can't with any of the traditional construction methods. This is all additive manufacturing. In the past, it was all subtractive. And so there's a common phrase that's being used in the 3D printing world. It's that complexity is free. Because once you design something, you can make these parts very easy. The bottom one is actually a cast. If somebody breaks their arm, they can have their arm scanned and have a cast that fits perfect. So these 3D shoe printers are available. They're out there. They haven't made it to prime time yet, but it won't be that long. We can also do jewelry. So is it conceivable that future libraries are going to include a body scanner that's somehow linked to computers for people to design and print their own clothes? Is that reasonable? Are we going to have fitting rooms in libraries? You can try on your clothes. This is the topic of contour crafting. This falls into the 3D printing category, but it's actually printing with concrete. Now, the first part of this, they're starting with ceramics, and they're putting one layer upon another layer upon another layer. In just a little bit, it's going to switch over to printing with fast-drying concrete that's fiberglass reinforced. So there has been, over the past few years, there's been this competition going on that's brewing around the world to see who could be the first to actually print an entire house. And there was a Dutch group, there was a group in the US, there's one in London, and they were using this type of technology. They're thinking about, this is a demonstration where they're just building a wall, and you can see just one layer upon another layer. If you think about a concrete pumper that's pumping concrete into that device there, and it's building this wall, and they could build this wall very quickly. So as it turns out, with this competition going on, it was actually the Chinese that came out of the woodwork and printed the first house. Not only did they print the first house, they printed 10 houses in one day. Some of them were small, but in China, there's lots of people who are homeless. And so these might not be the finest crafted homes in the world, but they're pretty durable. And creating 10 of them per day at an average price of under $5,000, that's pretty attractive. So this is the CEO of the company. He says that he's been working on this for the last 10 years. He said that before he actually printed these houses, he actually printed his entire factory, which was a 10,000 meter factory. He He said it took him 30 days. He says, that was a lot of work. They used a very similar process to the one I just explained to you. But this is what is envisioned for printing houses. We set up a rig around where the house goes, and then you just put layer upon layer, and in less than a day, you can have your entire house printed. It could even be a 2-story house. So sometime in the not too distant future, you get tired of your house, you can just grind it up and reprint it. Does this mean that you can grind up your library and reprint that as well? Maybe. If you think that's so far out, this company, Bet Abrams, started selling house printers. This is one for $16,000. It's a Slovenian company that's making these. So what are you waiting for? You can just go buy one of these. Once we're able to print our entire house, we no longer have a need for flat walls. Every wall can become an artistic centerpiece. Architects are going to have a heyday with this. They can create free-form structures, open designs that are impossible to create with today's construction methods. And incidentally, we can print with concrete for a while, then glass, then steel, then back to concrete again. The types of buildings that we'll be able to create are going to be vastly different than we've ever imagined them in the past, because complexity is free. We can do things that are uniquely designed, and we're not just leaving it up to a few architects around the world to design all these houses. Everybody can create their own if they want. And it's just a matter of scaling up before we can actually print things as large as an entire ship, or a baseball stadium, or a floating island. I love floating islands. I think I'll take 2. So when Chris Anderson says 3D printing is going to be bigger than the internet, the reason he's saying that is because the physical world, the economics of the physical world, is 5 to 6 times greater than the digital world. So it actually makes good sense. I'll touch on some other future industries. Atmospheric water harvesters, sucking moisture out of the air. This one's called FogQuest. MIT has this research project down in Peru with fog nets. This is the Warka Water Tower. Over in Africa, they have great problems with water. In fact, there's a total of 1,400 children under the age of 5 die every day from water-based diseases there. So most of the young girls in Africa are charged with hauling water great distances to supply their village. But they figured out a way that in just 4 days, they can have a team of people that build the entire water tower, and they can get around 100 liters a day sucked out of the air, and that eliminates the need for lots of young girls hauling water. This is a company called Eoli Water out of France, and they built these windmills that suck moisture out of the air. They can get up to 500 liters a day, and they're testing these out in Abu Dhabi right now. A gentleman by the name of Edward Liniger actually developed this technology. This is solar-powered units for sucking moisture out of the air to irrigate the plants nearby. Again, this is all new technology. And the holy grail for this industry is the self-filling water bottle. It's a water bottle that sucks moisture out of the air. If somebody is stranded on a life raft in the middle of the ocean, that's the difference between life and death for them. But people that are going on long hikes or walking through the desert, this would be a great tool to have. Driverless cars, we've heard a lot about driverless cars. Looks like a pretty sexy car, doesn't it? Google's actually testing out a lot of these. The latest model of the Tesla car actually has a steering assist built into it. It's not totally automated yet. And this will all happen in baby steps. This is actually the first driverless car that's available to the public. It costs $150,000 US money to buy it, and it goes a whopping 18 kilometers an hour. It's designed more for like malls and theme parks and public areas like that. Virtually every car company in the world has a driverless division now that's working on this because they see this as the future. So if you think about sometime in the not too distant future, you go out in front of your house in the morning, you take out your smartphone, you punch in, I want to go to work, I want to go to school, I want to go shopping. A driverless car comes and picks you up, takes you to where you want to go, and from there it picks somebody else up and takes them to where they want to go. These cars will be floating around at all times. This changes us from this on-demand mindset, or just-in-case mindset. I have a car in my garage just in case I need to go somewhere. I have tools in my garage just in case I need to build something, to a just-in-time mindset. I can summon a vehicle at any time I want. And for the car companies, when they start marketing these cars, they're going to shift the focus from the driver experience to the rider experience. I don't care what the driving experience is because I'm just sitting in it. I want to know what all I can do, what channels I can get on the TV, what type of music I can listen to, how comfortable are the seats. This is what an intersection will look like in the driverless car era. Kind of the way India looks right now, but all right, flying drones. We've heard quite a bit about flying drones. This is actually a restaurant that has delivering food right to the table with drones. And when you think about it, what could possibly go wrong with whirling blades and chopsticks? This is the drone everybody wants, though. This is the emergency beer drone. I wrote a paper recently on this, 192 future uses for flying drones. And it was basically intended to expand people's thinking because we're kind of insulated. We don't really look at all the different options. Drones are like 3D printing. They're going to go off in 1,000 different directions. And it's going to create lots of new jobs and lots of opportunity. It'll also create other problems. We'll be using drones for emergency rescue situations. Somebody gets lost in an avalanche, we'll send out drones rather than put people at risk. The news organizations will send out drones whenever there's an incident, some accident, a hostage situation, somebody holding up a bank, whatever it might be. They'll send out a drone to get the news right away. And once they do that, then they will send it to the computers that will generate the news themselves. You think that'll happen? It'll be a group of people just like this in the background, waiting for their drones to send them the information that they can write a story about. Every city, whenever there's an emergency situation, the first response will be to get eyes on it. They'll send up a drone and they'll get some visual on what's happening, and then they'll be able to formulate a good response. We have the potential to eliminate forest fires completely. Forest fires are very easy to put out when they're first started. When they're this big around, it's real easy to put out that forest fire. Once it turns into a massive blaze, then it's very difficult to put out. But when it's still very small, then we can call in the fire extinguisher drones and they'll just put it out. We'll have these guys doing lots of work for us. This is kind of a fascinating drone here called Air Dog. It's designed for people that are doing extreme sports. And so wherever you're going, these drones will follow behind you with a video camera. So they're recording your presence in whatever you're doing. You could be skiing, you could be riding motocross, skateboarding, whatever. And there are libraries now that are loaning out drones. Somebody's already broke the ice on this. So you better start stocking your shelves with drones, because the demand is coming. When Pete Diamani says that we're headed from a world of 2 billion people connected to the internet in 2010, because that's how many were connected, to 7 billion, which is essentially the entire planet by 2020, what is he referring to are these two companies here. This is Titan. This was just bought by Google. It's a solar-powered drone company. All the wings are covered with solar cells. And it has the wingspan roughly of a 747. It's a huge wingspan. Facebook bought a similar company called Enchanted. Now these fly at very high altitudes. They fly above all the weather patterns. They fly above all the traffic. They would fly above an entire hurricane. They're that high, and they never have to come down. So what Titan says that they can stay aloft for up to 5 years. Initially, it's going to be less than that. But their whole game plan is to bring the internet to the other 3 billion people on Earth. Ultra-high-speed transportation. We're just not traveling fast enough. So Elon Musk had proposed something called the Hyperloop, and he has a person competing with him, Daryl Oster, who's talking about this company called ET3. The Hyperloop was designed to go around 1,200 kilometers an hour. But ET3 was a little farther along, so Elon Musk kind of held off on doing anything with the Hyperloop. But ET3 is tube transportation, where you're traveling inside of a tube. They take all of the air out, then you're traveling on a maglev track, so there's no friction. So once the air is gone and you're on a maglev track, you can just use your little finger and push the capsules down the tube. So the speeds you can achieve in something like this are tremendous. And just to put it in perspective, we currently ship more stuff in tubes than any other way right now. We're shipping water, we're shipping oil, sewage. We have all kinds of stuff that we're shipping in tubes right now. So why not freight and why not people? It's a logical extension. And so they've spent a tremendous amount of time and energy engineering this out. They're just working on trying to get money for the first prototype, which could happen very soon. But the speeds they can achieve on this are speeds of 6,000 kilometers an hour. So a trip from Washington to Beijing theoretically could happen in 2 hours. It's entirely possible, as we move into a transportation network like this, we become a very fluid society. We could have breakfast in Auckland. We could have lunch in London. We could have dinner in Chicago. That's the type of lifestyle that we could achieve once we have this type of transportation. This has the potential of becoming the world's largest infrastructure project. And when we have lots of people unemployed, when we have people that are looking for their next gig, this is one that could be a 50-year build-out employing hundreds of millions of people literally all over the world. So again, I ask this question: what role should libraries play in the creation of new business and industry? When I ask this question about what's the role of next-gen libraries, it's all about this one word: experimentation. You need to try things. It's not cut and dried. So when I ask the question of have we reached peak employment for libraries, and when will we reach peak demand for library services? The answer to that is that the libraries are waiting for us to reinvent them. Once we reinvent them, then there's no limit. We can keep building on libraries forever. I love this quote here. Mark Twain says that you can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. Not really sure what that means, but I love the quote. All right, I told you up front that I was going to make a big announcement here today. So here's Corn knows what it is. So I intended to build up lots of anticipation for this. So we are actually transitioning from a world with national systems to global systems. And so what I'm proposing here is a global institution for New Zealand, which is a global language archive. We're losing languages around the world at an alarming rate. This is a map here put together by this company called Living Tongues, and it shows where lots of the endangered languages are right now. This is a long tail curve, and it shows that a small portion of the world, just 5% of the world, speaks 6,500 different languages. So that's a really small number of people. So 6,500 languages are spoken by only 5% of the world's population. And there's currently over 500 languages are spoken by fewer than 10 people. We're in danger of losing not only the language, we're in danger of losing the culture, the heritage. The people that are the last remaining speakers of these languages are going through great anxiety. They're feeling like their ancestry has just been invalidated, that they don't have anybody that wants to continue on this heritage. If there was a place where they could go to put this language, that would be something that they would jump on really quickly. So creating something like this, a global language archive, what would that look like? Well, that's the fun part. You can get very creative. There are some language museums around the world. They're just small, isolated, representing just a few languages. But think of this as a cultural feast for the mind. Think of this as the Louvre of languages, the Smithsonian of the spoken word, the Guggenheim of global culture. Not only is it just a language archive, there's other things that could go with it. A language library, language university, language research, language museum. All of these things create huge opportunities. So what does it mean to archive a language? That still remains to be seen. It depends on how aggressive you want to get. So when you think about the scope of the opportunity here, these languages would be funded by the country of origin. Lots of these countries would be willing to pay to do something with these languages as a way of saving their heritage. Poor countries that can't afford it could be funded by the UN. Corporations and foundations could sponsor a lot of them. So if you think of 6,500 languages, there's probably 7,000 languages in the world. 6,500 languages at an average cost of $1 million per language. That's $6.5 billion project that gets created here. Ancillary developments added onto this could increase that 10 to 100-fold. This could be a huge project. So why New Zealand? Why put it here? Well, New Zealand is very culturally aware. You're very tuned in to all the cultures surrounding you. You're very experienced with international travelers. Something like 95% of all the flights that land at the airport in Auckland are international flights. You're viewed as politically neutral. Makes it easy. Very few people don't like New Zealand. And probably the number one reason why to put it here is that you already know how to speak Hobbit. So is this something that you want in your future? All you need to do is say yes. Put a stake in the ground. This isn't a project I'm selling or anything. It's an idea I came up with several months back, and I wrote an article, posted it on my blog site. Nothing's ever happened since then. I haven't presented it at any conference at all, so this is the very first opportunity. I think it would be perfect here, though. So it's time to claim your spot in the new center of the global universe. Not only will you be able to celebrate your own heritage, but you'll be able to celebrate everybody else's as well. So I think that's a tremendous opportunity. So the future is ours to write. I'll end with a few predictions here. The first one is the Internet of Things will virtually eliminate theft because we can start tagging everything of any value. And or we might just create a whole new caliber of thieves. But driverless cars will change transportation more fundamentally than the invention of the automobile itself. And by 2030, the largest web company will be one that hasn't been created yet, based entirely on education. That one's based on lots of science. Not, but by 2030, the average library will allow people to print their own clothing, will be housed in a printed building, will have books and other items delivered by drones, will be operated by a team of robots, serve as a working home for countless freelancers, will frequently use driverless bookmobiles, will offer micro-college classes. I didn't talk about that here, but will help people to accomplish 100 times more than the average person can accomplish today. We're entering into a period of unprecedented opportunity. So why is this period so important? Because humanity is going to change more in the next 20 years than in all human history. Our risk factors at the same time will increase exponentially, and our children's children, who haven't even been born yet, are counting on you. As Steve Jobs says, right now is one of those moments when you are influencing the future. But even so, sometimes our best efforts just look a lot like this. Yeah, just like that. As Thomas Edison says, opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Isn't that the truth? So any of you that want more information about what we do at the Da Vinci Institute or the Visionarium Project, feel free to contact us, sign up for our free newsletter. And I love any excuse I can get for coming back to New Zealand. So thank you very much for having me here today.